board on. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment meeting for October 21st, 2010. If you haven't already done so, please silence any cell phones or other noisemakers you may have. If you are coming up to, as you come up to address your case, please come to the center podium, give us your name and address, and if you're here to be heard asking a question or protesting, please, at the appropriate time, come up to the podium on the side, and again, give us your name and address so we can have that for the record. First item is approval of the minutes of the October 7th, 2010 meeting.
Move the approval of minutes for the October meeting. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Please record your vote. That door. Minutes are approved. Next item is continuance request for withdrawals.
We have none today.
Okay. Nothing on the consent docket, so we'll move into items requiring separate vote.
Our first item is item number 1, case number 13328, request of use variance of United Production Company for a permit to drill an oil gas well located at 12916 Piedmont Road.
Good afternoon. I'm Walt Hendrickson. I'm the geologist with United. Just here to answer any questions.
Mr. Baker, we'll let you settle in. We're on item number 1, just in case. So, yep. No unfavorable
I'm sure
considerations?
you're aware of the statutory standards.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve item number 1. Please record your votes.
We got a problem with it.
Got okay.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. That's approved. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two are also United Productions, so same thing. Here to answer questions.
Item number 2, case number 13329, request of use variance of United Production for permit to drill an oil gas well located at 12920 Piedmont Road.
Same side, it looks like, basically.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Please record your votes. You're approved on that one.
Item number 3, case number 13327, request of use variance of United Production for permit to drill an oil gas well located at 10304 Northwest 122nd Street.
And I'll move to approve.
Well, this one does have an unfavorable consideration that might need to be addressed. Is that there was a mention of a private airport runway?
Yes, sir. We drilled one much closer. We have, of course, FAA approval, and we drilled the KB number 1, 680 feet off the end of the runway and had no problems. This one is further away and not in direct line with the runway.
Doesn't that fall under statutory standards, though? Or does it? It doesn't? Okay. I thought it did. I still move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Motion and a second to approve. Please record your votes. It's approved as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Item number 4, case number 13331, request of use variance of Shields Operating, Inc. for a permit to drill an oil gas well located at 6424 Southwest 134th Street.
I'm John Shields, the owner of Shields Operating, and I'm here to answer any questions anyone might have.
And have you seen the staff report
Yes.
with the request as far as from the Department of Airports?
Yeah, I filed the application already with them.
We do have someone. We do have
Is there
someone.
someone
We have a question for the applicant from Jimmy Mars. Mr. Maruska, if you'll just give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Whisker at 6 o'clock.
And speak into the microphone if you can there, just so we can record everything. No, that's okay. Thank you so much.
Jimmy Maruska, in 6317 Southwest 134th, Oklahoma City.
And you had a
And
question?
I thought we were drilling hard exactly fit that location, because there's houses right there. If they go east, I live just across the road from it. And it's just a little bit to the east, not too. We had it in 49 drilled, didn't it? The house is right either, but it's in the middle of a second 40 acre spacing. So it wasn't, but this is going to be terrible for those houses right there next to it. That one on the west, especially, they're just across the fence. Can't be over 350 feet. And the other two houses right across the road, and it's going to be a terrible noise, but all that room, we got another house. I was just wondering what the reason was as why they had picked that corner where the houses were. When if they go east and south a little bit, they get far away from the houses.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that? And Mr. Maruska, you're more than welcome to stay at this podium, and that way conversation can occur between all parties at this point.
The reason we picked this location is geologically it's the most, in our opinion, is the most advantageous spot to drill. We have formed, the reason he talked about a 40-acre situation, normally you drill in the center of 40. This is a 640-acre irregular unit. This spot is essentially at the center of our drilling and spacing unit. And I don't know if Mr. Maruska was aware about, I'm not sure who the young lady was at one of the homes. There's about 3 homes on your property. And I spoke with a young lady and got a water sample. I'm not sure.
There's 3 on
Right. And I visited with her for a little while about it.
Sir, sorry. Make sure you're directing every comment to you, and then we can, yes.
And I spoke with a young lady that lived in one of the homes and asked for permission to get a water sample, which we're required to do, a fresh water sample. And I told her that if there's any problem with the noise, and we've done this in the past, that we'll be more than happy to put anyone up in a hotel that has any problem sleeping because of the noise. It should take about 7 to 8 days to drill the well, and it certainly will be noisy during that time. But we have offered to do that for anyone within, say, 1,000 feet that complains about the noise. We'd be more than happy to put them in a hotel during the drilling of the well.
So the drilling period is 7 to 8 days when the noise
That's correct.
would be a potential factor.
No, there'll be noise moving in for a day or two before and moving out, but that'll be during daylight hours.
Okay.
Well, across the road, that's my house and barn, and I just on the east side of that. Of course, the other wells are drilling just about the house, and they was down, there's a creek, makes a curve right there. There is covered in the middle of a 40-acre section. I was wondering why they filling it, moving it just in that little corner, or it's going to disturb more people than go out here the other ways, and then they shouldn't make any difference, 100 or 200 feet.
Well, I don't really think 100 or 200 feet at that, with the type of setup that we're going to have here, is going to really make a whole lot of difference as far as the amount of noise goes. We picked our location to be at least more than the minimum distance or the maximum distance, whatever it is, from homes of 300 feet. And if we move too far, if we move down into the bottomland to the south or to the east, we're going to be subject to flooding. There's really just a small area up here in the very northwest corner of the Rowland property there that is suitable, in our opinion, for drilling without having to have any risk. And geologically, we'd be moving off structure and away from our best spot. So that's
Is your well right in the middle of this square?
in the center, roughly in the center of that, yes.
Yeah. And how big is that square?
450 by 350, I believe.
And you're entering off of which street now?
Southwest 134th.
From 134th?
We'd be coming in just on the northeast corner of our location.
Okay.
There's an existing entrance already there.
So you wouldn't be trafficking on the west side here then?
No, we wouldn't.
Okay.
All the equipment will be coming in from the east, from I-44.
Are there any other questions?
Questions or comments?
No. I move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the application. Please record your votes. You are approved.
Thank you.
And Mr. Maruska, did you understand his offer to folks in the area if during that 7 or 8 days there is a noise problem? Would you mind explaining that to him, sir?
Mariska, when we're drilling, if there's any problem, if anybody has any trouble,
And you guys are approved, so you're more than welcome to just have the
we'll do
conversation.
that.
Please explain that
yeah,
to the gentleman.
I'll go ahead.
You can speak outside.
You going to be drilling
Right, I'll be the one. I'i'll be out there all the time.
You guys can speak outside if you'd like
Okay.
to.
Where I live, they drilled that well back in the 48, 49, and they come in there to redo it. And they was working on that thing, and the neighbors and that, and it was terrible noise. And I said, I can imagine when they get to drilling.
Well, it must,
I don't know about that part.
yeah, obviously that was a long time ago, Mr. Maruska, 48, 49, but he will address any of your other questions. He is approved to drill the well, and I would encourage you two gentlemen to have a conversation in the
do that.
foyer.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item.
Item number 5, case number 13309, request of Michael Pate for a variance to the maximum 8-foot fence height requirement located at 2416 South Nebraska Avenue.
My name is Nathan Leapart. I'm here on Michael Pate's behalf. He had a conflict today. I'm with the Electric Guard Dog. If I'm correct, you guys have heard about our system before in previous applications. I can answer any questions about it, but just as a refresher, it's a 10-foot high electric security fence. It's completely medically safe and installed behind our customer's existing perimeter fence. It's there to prevent people from breaking in, which has been occurring at our customer locations. It's, meets the IEC standard on electric security fencing, and it acts as an alarm system in general.
There is in the staff report, have you seen the staff report in regards to emergency vehicles and the shut-off switch?
I've not actually seen the staff report, but I'm sure that Michael has seen it. I have not.
Might want to, thank you.
Is this, while he's considering that, we're seeing a few more of these now, and we have comments that it could be unique to the property, but there's properties all over town that are that are vandalized from time to time. Maybe not in large ways, but varying degrees. Is there any discussion amongst planning or the council or anything about this kind of thing? If we're going to, because we can hardly consider it unique if people come in several times a year to get it done. I wouldn't think.
One of my questions too. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Well, no, I don't know of any. I can't recall of any. Can you, AJ?
There hasn't been.
It's my understanding.
It's not the electric nature of the fence.
It's the height.
It brings them here. It's just the height.
Yeah.
Which brings up my question. I was thinking last night, because we are seeing quite a few of these. Why 10 feet instead of 8? I'm not going to climb an electric 8-foot fence, let alone a 10-foot fence.
We do that so that it's higher than the customer's fence. It's harder to get over. If you had it even with the customer's fence, you could just attack one barrier at a time, climb up the first fence, and just jump right over. So that's the reason for going to 10 feet.
Even though it's electric.
Yes. If you just jump over it, the electricity is going to zap out and get you as you jump over it. So you would have to touch it to be shocked by it. So people could presumably just jump down if they got over the first fence.
So that's assuming that the fence in front of it is at 8 feet?
That's true. And I'm not sure in this case whether or not either of those fences are at 8 feet or 6 feet.
You wouldn't have to come to request a variance if you were at 8 feet, is my understanding. So.
Okay. That may be the case. Typically, again, our company used to install them at 8 feet back in the early days. We found that it didn't provide enough security for people. People were getting over it at 8 feet, and we don't have that same problem at 10 feet.
Are you going to build a completely new fence, or are you going to extend the fence that you've got?
It's a completely new fence. So the customer already has an existing fence. We'll come in behind it and install a second fence that will be electrified. We never touch the existing chain link fence. Yes, what you have there is a depiction that shows our fence behind another customer's perimeter fence. Just on the staff report, a couple of points. We would be happy to install a shut-off box. There's different types of them. If we could find out which type, we could do that. I know kind of a standard type shut-off box is like a Knox box. We'd be happy to do so. And on the warning signs, actually 200. I assume that this is saying 200-foot intervals. It just says 200 intervals, but we install our signs every 60 feet, and they are smaller than 4 square feet in area. They're signage that's based on the IEC standard that governs what the size of the signage should be. But we install them, like I said, every 60 feet instead of every 200.
This seems like we need some standards for this kind of stuff if we're, if it's going to be a very repetitive thing or something.
I think, to your point, maybe it would be advantageous for the planning commissioner or the zoning to take a look at maybe allowing these in certain circumstances. So,
What kind of, is it AC electric, DC electric?
No, it's completely battery powered.
Okay, so
the battery is recharged by a solar panel. We don't touch the grid. So.
What's the voltage,
The voltage on the fence is 7,000 volts. It's an extremely short pulse, so it's only 1 to 3/10,000ths of a second in duration. So it's completely medically safe. I've touched it myself. It's painful. It's uncomfortable when you first touch it, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't harm you in any way.
There's not much amperage, and you know what the amperage is?
Actually, the amperage is not low. I mean, it's not extremely high, but it's not low. It's really the duration of the pulse that makes it safe. So it's, again, I'm confident it's safe, or else I wouldn't have touched it myself. So the phrase that we like to use is, a safe but memorable pulse.
How do they? This isn't really an issue here before us, I guess. But how do they maintain in between these fences here?
I'm sorry?
How do they maintain in between fences? You got a chain link fence over here, and you got an electric fence over here. Nobody would want to touch with a weed eater. How do they maintain in between?
We actually supply herbicide to our customers to spray in between.
Oh, what? Oh, you do? Oh, I see.
Yes.
But that extra 10 feet on top of the chain link and the barbed wire and everything else makes a difference, huh?
It does. We found that through experience.
other questions or comments at this point?
I'm just trying to figure out what's peculiar about the deal, other than any other thing. That's what's bothering me. Anybody else's site that's enclosing their site for security purposes.
Do you know the height of the existing fence at this location?
I do not. I apologize. I'm not sure.
Is it? Yeah.
We have to answer the statutory standards. One of them is what's peculiar about this site versus any other site that might have security problems, for instance. And then the other comes to my mind is this really the minimum necessary, to do that?
Yes.
And because it's coming before us more and more often, we can't just arbitrarily make that decision. It's okay to do something that's against the ordinance.
I understand. In both of these cases, there's another one following this one. They're both outdoor storage locations where they have property stored outside, which isn't necessarily the case at all surrounding properties.
We have that all the time.
I understand. Yeah. And they've had documented thefts, break-ins, damages to their property.
Do we have that information? How many incidents they've had?
I know actually Mr. Brown from Blumenthal, which is the next case that we'll speak about, could speak to what they've had, but I believe it's 13.
14 since July 13th.
Yes. So, and he has...
Would you state your name and...
Yes. My name's Harry Brown. I'm the marketing manager with the Blumenthal Companies, and we are actually the next item.
Okay.
But we contacted the Guard Dog Electric Fence Company to help us with security. We're on Southwest 4th and Walker, just south.
Let's actually, I'm sorry, let's wait till the next item then, because we're only hearing the item for True Green Land Care at this moment, so, but thank you.
Again, speaking to the question of whether or not it's the minimum, again, through our experience installing, and we've installed more than 3,000 of these in 47 states, we found that 10 feet is required because otherwise, again, people can attack one barrier at a time.
That's assuming they're on top of an 8-foot fence and hopping over.
That's true.
So if the fence in front was 6 feet, that additional 2 feet is what you're saying is
possible.
Helpful to...
However, again, we've installed 8 feet behind a lot of different fences early on in the company, and again, we had bad experiences with that.
JJ, do you recall the power station at Post in 44th Street? Didn't we require an 8 or a 10-foot fence around that substation?
That was a PUD, wasn't it, on
Yes.
the substation? I don't remember.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, we asked them to put a 10-foot, and it's actually a solid masonry type fence with the barbed wire on the inside, so you can't see it from the outside. And I think that's one of the reasons why we ask it to be 10 foot. And I might be mistaken, but I think that's the case.
I remember the barbed wire, we wanted it going inside.
Right.
I remember that.
I can understand why they're asking for it, even though it does, I think is that the height of a prison fence? Or is it prison fence higher? 10 foot? I don't,
I'm not sure.
Haven't been there.
But I'm not sure what the height of the prison fence is. But, it kind of looks like a prison, and, I hate that we're at that point, but in where this is located, I really don't think it's going to be detrimental, from a site standpoint, and I think the staff has indicated that, and I'm going to recommend approval.
To address the issue of the prison look, obviously we hear that concern quite a bit. I actually, before I joined the company 3.5 years ago, worked in a property right next to one of what eventually was one of our customers. I didn't know it at the time because I'd never even heard of the electric guard dog. But again, I worked next to this property for over a year. I never noticed, but they had the electric fence there the entire time. It's essentially invisible behind the customer's fence. You don't notice it unless you're looking for it. And the pictures that you saw, if you're looking for it, you'll see it. If not, it's very difficult to see because it's just 20 small strands of wire.
It is much more transparent than a chain link fence. Those additional 2 feet, just as an observation. So, there's a motion to approve the application. Is there a second? There's no second on your motion, which the motion dies.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm not allowed to make a second, so is there an alternative motion? We are missing one additional member today.
Okay.
So without an action, this would just continue to the next date. Is that correct?
Would you like a continuance?
I guess so.
I mean, that's one option. Then we might have a full panel at the next.
Okay. I guess we'll ask for a continuance.
Okay.
I believe we have another matter in November anyway, so.
Okay.
The next meeting is November 4th, 2010, so continue. We need a motion for the continuance. Need a motion for the continuance?
So move. Second.
Motion and a second to continue the application to the next meeting, November 4th. Please record your votes. It is continued.
Thanks.
Next item.
Item number 6, case number 13310, request of Michael Pate for a variance to the fencing and hard surface paving requirements located at 525 Southwest 4th Street.
At this time, if I might speak, my name is Harry Brown. I'm the marketing manager with the Blumenthal Companies in downtown Oklahoma City. We're 1 block south of I-40 between Walker and Lee at this particular facility. This is next to the buffer area of the Coeur d'Alene development area. The area to the immediate east of us is the 1 or half block buffer. This area is cited for multi-dimensional urban development. It is part of the area that the city, the word's not condemned, but blighted. So we are part of the blighted area. The fence that this barrier hopefully will go behind has been in existence since the 40s or 50s in close to this same location. This used to be the Coca-Cola Dr. Pepper bottling plant that we have here, and this particular area was always used to store their tank trucks. We have some overhead pictures of that time period. I also have some overhead pictures of 90, 91 that show where the vehicles were parked in this area. So the gravel and not having to pave the area, in our opinion, is grandfathered in, and we're not asking for a new fence. We're asking for a fence set inside of an existing fence that was allowed in 2003 by city permit, which I have here. Also, we are lucky enough to have been between the Goodwill building on our right, the Salvation Army on our right, and the Jesus House on our left. So we are in an area where we have a lot of people walking by at 5 or 5:30 at night. They enjoy taking liberties underneath our pecan trees and spending the evenings. We have been broken into over 14 times since July 13th. We have hired off-duty Oklahoma City police officers, and the break-ins continued. We have hired the neighbors to come around in the evening, and the break-in continued. We have put up hidden cameras that take picture at night and day, and we have pictures of the thieves breaking in, but unfortunately the cameras that we bought take 6 shots at a time, and we have some beautiful photographs of the back of some people breaking into our customers' vehicles. Every time this happens, it costs us $1,000 towards our insurance policy, not to mention having to call customers and explain to them that something that's in our possession has been broken into, and we apologize, but their possessions are gone and their cars are broken windows and their dashboards are ripped out. We've done just about everything we can think of to try to protect this area for our customers and ourselves to continue to do business in this area until our facility is gone and this becomes a beautiful part of Coeur d'Alene, which we support 110%. At this point, I saw the Oklahoma Auto Auction when I was driving by. I noticed that they had a picture on a little sign about 8.5 by 11 that said guard dog security. It was yellow and it had a dog barking. And I thought, that's it. We'll call them and rent some guard dogs. That'll do it. Nobody will break in with guard dogs. Well, I called the insurance company and they said no. I called the city and they said no. And I called guard dog. I said, I want to rent some Dobermans, kind of all at the same time. And they said, we don't rent Dobermans. I said, but your guard dog. No, we do an electric fence. It's electric fence. I said, I didn't see an electric fence. Well, let me explain to you how this works. And that's how we came to know guard dog fence. And when we looked at all of the options that we have and the fact that these break-ins are continuing, and I don't want to speak on the matter that happened just a minute ago, but True Green Chemlong is one of our customers. And I know for a fact that they have the same situation because they're next to the old Crossroads Mall. And they are in a very industrial area. They're breaking into their trucks and stealing pumps. So I did not know that they were trying to get a fence at the same time as we were, but if we can get the fence done at the same time, then they only have to send in one crew to build both these fences, and they can ship all the equipment here at one time, which saves money. So we went before the downtown board this morning, and we were unanimously approved to ask for these variances because electric fences and barbed wire fences are not what we want in downtown. We don't want them either. The Blumenthal companies have never done anything in this area to make this neighborhood look worse. And we love this area. We have a lot of customers come through. We're authorized remanufacturers for Mopar, so we get those guys in from Detroit. I've worked with the city over and over, support 110% Project 180, Coeur d'Alene, everything. But I've got to figure out how to stop the break-ins, and this is the answer.
And your business is moving when the interstate moves?
Yes.
So that's a year and a half?
Well, actually, the interstate is going to come down. Our business that moved where the new interstate is now on 3rd and Western. What we hope happens is when Coeur d'Alene becomes closer, somebody will come in and purchase the property, and we'll be able to build a new facility, and this will become multidimensional urban development. Or another thing that we're doing is the Blumenthal family is meeting with the same developers that built these condos right across the street, and we are looking at maintaining the property and building our own condominium complex here so the property stays within the Blumenthal family. There's no question that we will be out of this area. There's no question that this is a 2 to 5 to 8 year fix. But and the other thing that we did is we elected to hire the same realtor that has all of the property in the corridor just to the south of I-40 so that the congruency of the development can take place in betterment for the city. We hired Sperry Van Ness for all of our facilities here. We talked to Oklahoma Mattress. They did the same thing. City Carbonics did the same thing. And then the Oil Producers Cooperative. So whoever wants to come in and develop this area has one guy to talk to.
You've got an existing perimeter fence now?
Yes, sir.
Which is monitored continuously?
My fence, yes, it's monitored by security guards that come by at night in the neighborhood. It's monitored by a camera off of my facility that points at it. It's monitored by 2 cameras inside, and it's monitored. I bought the OG&E lights, so it looks like broad daylight all day, and they're still breaking in.
But there's no continuous monitoring by an alarm company or somebody that watches the cameras and
That is correct. This fence is actually monitored, and when this fence gets broken, then the cell phone dials either our contacts or the police to let them know that our facility has been broken into, just as if it was part of our building, which is fantastic.
And you're satisfied that an 8-foot electric fence is not adequate?
I have to believe the engineers coming from their company. I have an 8-foot fence existing now that has about 1 foot to 1.5 feet of barbed wire on top of it, and it's not stopping anyone.
They're coming over that fence?
I believe they are, because I can see occasionally where they have like thrown a jacket over the top, and you can see where the barbed wire is compressed down. What happens with the electric fence is they throw the jacket over it, and it shorts out this electric fence, and it trips the alarm. So they don't get shocked, but the alarm goes off.
So once they're in your place of business, are they cutting your fence now and to gain access to remove whatever they're stealing from you?
They're stealing radios, computers, tools, things that can most likely be thrown over the top of the fence. I have not had the fence cut. I have had some areas where it looks like maybe they pulled the fence up and scooted underneath it, and then the barbed wire on the top has been collapsed where maybe somebody came over the top.
What do you have in that area that they're...
This particular area houses our customers' vehicles. So the pickup trucks, the diesel trucks, the school buses, the Department of Public Safety, we have that contract, so we have the highway patrol's vehicles there. We have BMWs, Mercedes, just all of our vehicles. The Blumenthals have been in automotive since 1949. We do everything from the smallest Mazda GLC up to the biggest 18-wheeler.
So they're stealing the automobiles? Or
No, sir. They're breaking the windows out of the automobiles, ripping the dashboards out, and stealing the stereos, the personal items that are in the vehicles, the tools. I've had people leave their laptops in there. They steal those, their CDs. They go through the glove box. There's actually some instances where the owners had their titles in the vehicles, and they've actually stolen their titles.
Is the location shown on this map, is that the new 40 or the old 40?
That's the old 40.
Current 40? Where would the new 40 be?
It travels along Southwest 9th, which is approximately 6 blocks or 9 blocks to the south of this facility.
South of there, okay.
Just for information purposes, we can go ahead and drop variance on the barbed wire and the chain link fence.
I'm sorry?
We're just going to drop the variance on the barbed wire and the chain link fence. It's really not applicable. Those are pre-existing.
That's correct. That's correct.
So really, it's the height of the fence, the new fence, then the fourth?
The height of the proposed electric fence. And the
two counts.
and the hard surface paving.
Once they get into, once they've scaled the fence and they've broken into the car, then I assume they're scaling the fence to get back out, correct?
They either are scaling the fence or, like I said, sometimes I've seen it pulled up where maybe they're scooting back under it.
So how would they get out without triggering an alarm? If they managed to get over your electric fence and then they had to get back out,
They couldn't. I don't think they
they
could.
would have to trigger the alarm, correct?
I believe so. Anytime the electricity is broken, the alarm will go off. The cell phone will call the police and our contact.
If they don't trigger it getting out, they're almost certain to trigger it or getting in, they're almost certain to trigger it trying to get out.
That's right.
It'd be very difficult not to trigger it while you're trying to get out. However, by that point, the damage is done.
Well,
To the vehicles.
to the vehicles.
Yeah.
Hopefully the person is caught, the alarm company's called.
And it's worth pointing out, one of the key purposes of the fence also is to deter people. So it's not just that they're going to trigger the alarm coming in or going out, but just by virtue of seeing it there, they'll move along and not break in.
Yeah, I think all of us up here understand the potential need. It's really the ordinance that we're supposed to uphold, which are, 4 conditions to be granted a variance. And I think that's what some of our members are struggling with at the moment, because we're seeing more and more of this. So what makes that unique?
I appreciate
Theft
that.
happens all over the town. So
In the town I live in at home, I'm on a very similar board where we have very similar rules of government. So I understand.
The one consideration of this thing is you're really talking about a temporary request.
Well, in effect, because this facility will not be here. As I said, it's blighted. It's slated for urban development.
Right.
And one way or the other, we're going to be moving maybe to the Lucent building. So,
Yeah. No, that's a different consideration in my mind if you're going to do something temporarily to take care of a problem in an interim. Most of these applications affect a property for 50 or 100 years or whatever. I mean, they could. And so we don't know how an area is going to redevelop or that type of thing. So in this case, we know how this area is going to redevelop.
And we also have documentation of a very, I would consider a very severe problem if they've had 14 break-ins since July 3rd and they have monitored fencing and security guards, et cetera.
unfortunately, my break-in file, this is all the police reports and all the insurance reports on the various.
Document a rather, that's a pretty severe amount of issue.
If this board were to consider a variance that had a time limit on it, say 3 years, and then you came back, and you can come back in 3 years and say, we've got nothing's changed for us, nothing's changed for the city or whatever in this area, at the time that we could reconsider it, would that be?
Your contract, I believe, is 3 years, 36 months? I would have no
Yeah,
objection
3-year
to that
contract.
whatsoever.
Okay.
The only thing I would ask is that it's taken a couple $1,000s to get to this point. I would hope that I could come back without having to reapply for those variances and permits.
If we put a time limit on it, are they required, to reapply?
That makes it a little bit expensive. The automotive industry, with the Chrysler bankruptcy, took us from 203 employees down to 44. And then the Cash for Clunkers deal with the Obama administration, everybody who was going to fix their car for about a year didn't. So for the last 2 years, we've really been in an economic mindset of trying to save money, cut personnel, do more with less. And I would appreciate anything that would not increase our expenses at this time.
If you condition the variance, if you had the variance expire in 3 years, they would have to come back. If you had to put a condition in the variance that they come and report back to the board in 3 years of the effectiveness of the fence and where they are at that point in 3 years, that wouldn't require notice of any kind. So that wouldn't require any kind of fee. Just ask them to come back and give you an update.
The only concern is if somebody really started putting together a major project around here, within that time frame, and then they, it creates a kind of an island. It could create kind of an island of a certain nature within other areas. I mean, I know Goodwill's sold their property and they're moving. I know that, and so I mean, there are things that could potentially happen in the area, even though MAPS 3 is a longer-term project and that type of thing. There are things that could happen on there. So I hate to impose additional costs on you, anything like that, but we still need, we're still looking at this area as being a transition area that needs some kind of controls on what happens there. So,
if you are inclined, you could make a motion that says you approve their request for 3 years, subject to a report to this board after that time for reconsideration, for review. At that time, if you were satisfied with what they presented, then you could extend the period. If you got complaints about it, or if there was some other reason that you should not extend the time, then you could do that at that point.
What about if ownership changes?
You can make that a part of your motion, that is for this use, for this owner, for that limited period of time, subject to review after 3 years.
I think part of Rod's concern is not whether you would be happy, with the effect of the 10-foot fence 3 years from now, but what might be happening in terms of development and other property, changes in that area. Am I correct?
Yep.
See, I view this thing as less favorable for, from the visible standpoint than the preceding application. And I think if we do something here that's positive, I think we need to go back to the other one and see if we can't put a time limit on it or something like that so he can move on with that.
Maybe the owner could show up, could appear and give us some idea of what their level of theft has been as well, so some additional information.
Okay. So I make a motion to approve the application as regards the height limit. We'll address that one first. Maximum height limit can be 10 feet.
So that would take care of the first two.
First two.
Yep.
And conditioned on this for a 3-year period of time if the current operation is in business during that time. If the business closes, then it expires.
Or sells.
Huh?
Or sells, or...
Yeah, it changes the operation. Okay. And that you come back at that time and we can review it again and potentially extend the variance for that.
Well, we're going to require them to make a new application. It's for 3 years, and then it will expire, and you will have to reapply.
No,
Am I
that's
correct?
what we're
That's not what she said.
Okay.
In this instance, if you're telling them it's for 3 years, subject to review after that period, they wouldn't have to do a new application.
But does that give us the authority, or does that give this board the authority then to not extend it beyond the 3-year period?
Yeah.
At the end of your review, if you weren't satisfied with what you saw, for whatever reason, you could say at that point, no, we're not going to extend it. But in the other instance, it was a fixed date.
It'll keep him from having to spend more money applying for a variance in 3 years.
That sounds great. I agree with that 100%.
There's a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those two items. Please record your vote. You're approved. There's still one item that you have on that regarding the off-street parking hard surface pavement requirements. That's still part of your variance.
I think he waived it.
I recommend it. Huh?
I think JJ said that was waived because...
Waiving the barbed wire and the chain link fence because those were existing, grandfathered in, but not necessarily the hard surface pavement. But if
Then I'll make a motion to approve that one also as well.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the variance to the hard surface paving requirements
For the current use.
for the current use.
For the current use.
Current owner.
Yeah.
Please record your votes. That's approved as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and
Good luck.
gentlemen.
Would it be favorable to go back and look at item 5 again?
Under oath here, I can state that True Green has the exact same barbed wire fence we have, except it's painted black. I know for a fact it's the same height.
Well, there was other issues there with regards to whether or not they'd made a case and that kind of thing. You know.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know your level of break-in.
Would you be able to provide more information?
Yes, we could get that information.
Okay. Is that okay? Yeah.
We'll do that.
Jim was asked if there's merit to rehearing it, but there's not going to be a second at this time. It sounds like some of the other commissioners would like some additional information, so.
Certainly, we would prefer to get it approved today, so we could go ahead and take care of the installation, but if required, we could bring additional information at the next meeting.
You know, I think we need to kind of look at the time limit on these things, on all of them that, request that, until we get some kind of relief, either from an ordinance or whatever. Because Bob was saying, Rod was saying that, that we're beginning to see a lot of this stuff, so.
Certainly, we would not be opposed to an ordinance change, of course, assuming that it would allow our system. But, at this point in time, it hasn't been undertaken as far as I'm aware, so.
That'd be a good thing to champion.
And we'd be happy to do so.
See you in November.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 7, case number 13330, request of Elliott Architects for a variance to the required number of on-site parking spaces and to permit parking and maneuvering in the right-of-way located at 2800 North Penn.
Rob Elliott with Elliott Architects at 900 Northwest 6th Street in Oklahoma City. With us in the audience today also is our property owner, Mr. Sam Shadid, who has plenty of answers, as he was the original developer of the property and can provide additional information if you so need it. We're asking for a variance on the two items of the parking ordinance. One is the capacity of parking for our use, and also that there is, since it's an existing facility and development, there is parking that exists in the right-of-way.
There's no unfavorable considerations noted from staff. We're supposed to have 65 spaces, is that correct? And you will have 49?
I think I counted 47 or 48, depending on how fuzzy the paint is.
Oh, including two.
This location was a retail store, was it not?
It was, sir. As I knew it, I don't know what it was years past, but years ago I remember it as a retail men's store.
Is there anything else? Isn't there a little retail store at the north end of that parking lot?
The building is vacant now. Rococo, it's sort of a complex as it was originally developed or zoned and platted. The Rococo restaurant is a few yards north of us.
So it says at the southeast corner of 28th and Penn.
It is the northeast corner.
Oops.
Rococo uses your parking lots down there.
Rococo would be in the little retail strip center there on Classic. Rococo is at the north portion, and they would be at the
southeast corner.
East corner
Site plan.
at 28,
That's what it is.
and we would be the northeast corner of 27.
Yep. Move approval.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve your application. Please record your votes.
Thank you.
You're approved. Thank you.
Item number 8, case number 13332, request of Studio Architecture for a variance to permit a fence with brick columns and encroaching the site triangle located at 2215 North Walker Avenue.
Thank you. Patrick Schoenfeld, Studio Architecture, 1112 North Walker. What we are requesting is that we provide a new ornamental fence with masonry pilasters around the original, where the original fence is presently for Wilson Elementary. I don't know if you've got some in your packet. You will see that there are some images one that we submitted for the HP Commission for approval of our fence. And this is the corner that we're talking about. And right now, what we're trying to do is maintain the historical corner. There's a couple of very unique things at this intersection, is that the way the ordinance is written, that the site triangle has to be 25 feet off of the property line. The property line here is 35 feet off of 22nd Street, which really pushes that back. It's a very strange condition. Off of Dewey, which we're standing on where this photograph is taken, it's only an 18-foot, which really makes this site triangle get quite huge. You see this backstop. There's a historical backstop there. That site triangle actually goes on the other side of that backstop. And what we're wanting to do is come in and put a 1-4 by 1-4 masonry pilaster, just like these. The pilasters are spaced out at 32 feet, but at the corner we will have one opaque corner, but you will be able to see that you can see through them. These are just ones that we've presented. And what we're asking for is that existing fence line to be maintained. It's going to be a 5-foot fence with that masonry pilaster. That is the design at the bottom of that page that just came up right there. What we're trying to do, Wilson Elementary has a very small playground, and this takes a big swath out of that area. Now, the original fence, when it was put up, it was outside of the property line. We have approached all of the utility companies and have gotten all the approvals from the utility companies that we can get a revocable permit, which allows us to build a fence on the outside of the property line. So all we're trying to do is keep that existing fence, because Wilson, I'm doing this on behalf of School District 89, which is the Oklahoma City School District, and then there's a group of citizens that have raised the money for this fence. They've raised over $800,000 to add 4 classrooms, and then this is another enhancement to the project that they wanted to do. It's a coalition of parents and alumni and people that are just live in that neighborhood that are very focused on it. This building, this elementary school, is one of the most historical elementary schools. It was designed by Solomon Layton, who designed the Skirvin Plaza Hotel in the state capitol. So it's a very architecturally significant. So we're trying to give it the dignity that it needs. Because the present fence is incredible. It has many breaches in it, and it also has a lot of rusting. It's very distressed. So that's what we're asking for, is that just the existing fence line be maintained.
I think it's a beautiful deal that you want to do here. I just don't understand why you can't cut off the triangle.
I brought a bunch.
I mean, I can't tell from the looks of the situation here.
Yeah, can I? This shows you how big that triangle is.
Well, not the whole triangle. Not this whole thing.
Yes, sir.
But why can't you cut off the triangle, a small part in here?
If we go by the ordinance, we have to go 25 feet from where the property line is, and that goes all the way down there and extends across.
Okay. So the question I've got is would you be amenable to discussing something in here for a site triangle?
A smaller cutoff?
Yeah, smaller cutoff.
Yes.
Okay. That was my question.
Yes, I'm sorry. We would definitely, but we're trying to preserve as much as that playground as we possibly could. We could pull that in a little bit and keep it on the other side of that backstop and things, but
yeah. So a typical triangle in that situation is got 25 feet back on either side of what the existing, I'm thinking about the existing fence. If you went 25 feet back on either side of that, you came across, I'm trying to think of the...
I want to introduce Miles Tolbert. He's the president of Wilson Arts Incorporated, this coalition of parents, and then Leslie Batchelor, too.
Okay. Miles, will you just give us your name and address, please, for the record on the...
Yes, my name is Miles Tolbert. My address is 520 Northwest 15th Street in Oklahoma City. Leslie.
I'm Leslie Batchelor. I live at 409 Northwest 19th Street, and I have 2 children who play on this playground.
Thank you.
And the reason we wanted to step up was that we would be very concerned about any deviation from the current fence line because the amount of playground space is so precious at this site. And I think you can see from the plan that you have in front of you that that it is small. In fact, it's made substantially smaller by the recent Maps for Kids changes that have created the parking lot on the south side of the playground area. And we would very, very much like to maintain the current alignment of the fence.
That's what he's talking about.
Right, yeah. I think so, too. This is bigger. That's kind of what you're talking about, correct?
Oh, maybe even smaller. I just don't like the brick pilaster being right on the corner out there.
At the corner?
I don't like it being on the corner.
How much room would, I'm sorry, how much room would be required behind the backstop for circulation space?
Really, for regulation, you need about 10 feet behind the backstop if you're going to do true safety behind a baseball.
What is the status of the irrevocable permit that you've applied for?
It is being held up. We have gotten all the approvals, but it's all being held up because of this issue. I mean, we had to go get all the approvals from all the utility companies here. We have all those in place.
Is it contingent upon the approval of this board?
They're waiting to see how we act upon this, and if we have to modify the design or abandon the fence project.
You're aware one of the statutory standards is the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. Okay, and so we have some leeway in various ways we can look at that. You know, we could allow a fence out into exactly the same place without a brick pilaster, keep the pilasters back at those corners, or if you just bring it back to a certain point, you know, what would be a normal side triangle and put. Go ahead.
There is one other issue that we've got in this area, and the way we've got this design is that there is a utility easement, an Oklahoma City utility easement. We had to put a new water line in that serves a fire hydrant down 22nd Street. We can't have anything within that 15-foot easement. So they won't allow us to put so by doing what we're talking about is chamfering that corner off and putting masonry pilasters, they won't allow us to put masonry pilasters in that area. The way we have it shown is about the only way we can do this is having that one masonry pilaster in that corner. And then, because that, where our fence line is, we're outside of that 15-foot easement. If you look, there's a water line that you see right underneath the word that says property line, and that is that water line. Then I've got a dashed line each side of it. And that dashed line is the easement line. It doesn't show up on this, unfortunately. That's why I brought this document to show you. There's right where it says historical backstop, and I've got the arrow pointing. That is the line of that. It straddles. It's like 8 feet off of our existing fence line, which allows us our 15-foot easement, 7'6" each side of that water line. And they won't allow anything to go into that easement line. And that's part of what's holding up our revocable, and all these things are kind of tied together.
And on the corner, there's not, in your opinion, there's not a viable option for an architectural metal or something that would be, not very like the sight line.
I mean, what they have told us that they would accept if we didn't put a masonry pilaster in the corner, but to us, it's very important. We're going to have the whole site anchored with masonry pilasters. And to pull off this design and keep the look that we're trying to achieve, this is very important to us. And as you can see, that's where that fence post is approximately where our pilasters would be. Actually, we're going to hug it as close to the sidewalk as possible. And there's a stop sign on 22nd Street, and there's no stop on Dewey. So you can see it there, yes.
If I could say a word about the unique circumstances that we're faced with here. This playground really is truly small for the number of children who use it every day. And we've worked at every stage of approval with the appropriate body, including the Historic Preservation Commission, to preserve literally every square inch that we could of this. So our primary objective is to preserve the green space for the kids. That was even reflected in the work on the design of the building to make it a 2-story versus a 1-story. We've invested a lot in every square foot. And it may seem small, especially because you're just seeing this one portion, but children, it actually does make a difference that there's enough space currently behind the backstop that a group of children can play there separately from what's going on in other parts of the playground. So holding that line is very, very important to us. In addition, the neighborhoods that have stepped up to contribute money to this project have done so in large part because of the historic significance of the building. We've made improvements like increasing the amount of brickwork on the addition. It would not have been brick but for the private contributions. So although it's just an aesthetic consideration, the look of the pilaster is important to us, and I think it's important to the surrounding neighborhoods. I think it really is the best result, and as someone who drives that almost every single day, I think there will be an improvement in visibility by moving to the iron fence versus the very rusty and falling down chain link fence right now, which is just sort of a misty haze as you try to look right across 22nd. We really would ask the Board of Adjustment to support our request for this variance. It's very important to the community. I think it meets the criteria of the statute given the unique circumstances here.
How much playground area are you actually going to use? It looks like about 900 square feet. Is that about?
Yes, but right now they have a very active athletics program there, and it is one of the most heavily used playgrounds I've ever seen. And right now we've kind of sequestered them into a little tiny area while we've been doing construction. Now that construction is complete, they're anticipating the use of this playground area. And from day one, we've started this project. That has been a point of emphasis. Preserve as much of the green space as possible. We looked at a lot of different planning options on the expansion here, and this was about the only viable one and still meet all the HP concerns of pulling it away from the building and making sure you know that this is a new expansion to this historical building. So we've had just innumerable, we've had so many site parameters. This is a very small site for most of the elementary schools in the area, and this is just one of the most thriving. I don't know how much you know about it's just one of the most dynamic elementary schools in the state. It's an arts integrated school. They offer drama, vocal music, strings, so it's kind of a magnet elementary school, and we just kind of want to give it that extra statement, and we don't think that a small masonry pilaster will inhibit visibility of a car coming down that road.
Which is the through street again?
I'm sorry?
Dewey is the through street?
Dewey is the through street, and then 22nd Street is the...
So if you're coming out on 120 on 22nd Street coming out,
you have to stop at that intersection.
Okay.
And that is where you have the greater setback there, too, as far as a safety issue. It gets that car farther away than would be typical. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And we just have
start to lessen that risk.
We just have an extreme condition of where our property line actually is. Again, it's about 35 feet off of 22nd Street, which really makes this problem be much larger than it would have been.
But it's just my concern that if you're coming out to Dewey, that because of where the curb line is and where you have the pilasters sitting in there, the people might not see cars coming north on Dewey. Yeah, and that was my only concern, was that we look at these deals often and we say, well, yeah, there's plenty of room for the front half of the car to stick out far enough where you can see down the street and that thing. That was my only concern. If if you're there all the time, you don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I was just there today punching the exterior of the building out, and I was noticing the way, and I've never experienced any issue there with any visibility issues. Okay.
Karen Zimmer, 226 Northwest 22nd Street. I live in Mesta Park, and I happen to go down 22nd Street fairly often and stop there. And the fence just isn't in your way when you're coming west on 22nd Street, because you're far enough forward to see on the Dewey side of that fence.
You can see past the fence.
Yeah, you can see past the fence. And the berm or the boulevard on the street side of the sidewalk is wide enough there, and you're stopping so that you can see.
Okay. Can we go down and just see the examples that we have brought to? Yeah, there. See, you can see there's a masonry pilaster. It would not cover, and these are much tighter spaced masonry pilasters than what we're. Those are about 16-foot space. We're doing double the spacing, 32 feet between the masonry pilasters.
And the footprint of the pilaster
1'4" by 1'4". There, you can see that's what the shape of it. It's a 5-foot tall fence.
I'm convinced. Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the application. Please record your votes. You're approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 9, case number 13281, appeal of Stanley Crawford of the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission regarding the demolition of the garage located at 917 Northwest 40th Street.
I believe my uncle is going to make some comments first before I speak. If you have any questions, you can gladly ask me.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and just so you know, we have monitors down below, so we're going to be viewing the Skype conversation.
Okay.
We're pulling this in. So, thank you, Rita. Mr. Crawford?
Yes.
Can you hear us at this point?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. We have you in our monitors, so we can see and hear you as well. Please go ahead and make any comments that you care to make at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to briefly thank the board and the staff for allowing these continuances and the allowances for my medical condition and for allowing me to appear from New York today. Before I get started on the issues on the case, and I intend to be brief on the issues, I would like to ask the board to include in the record items that don't appear to be in the packet that you have in front of you, but shouldn't be material to today's hearing. And those items include the video audio recording of the February 3rd, 2010 hearing, the staff report and commission packet from February 3rd of 2010, all minutes approving the actions of the February, April, and June hearings in this case in front of the HP Commission, the order in the HP case that we're appealing from, and any minutes, if there are any, that approve that order, correspondence from KFC Engineering that appears to have been not placed in the record, all requests by me and the applicant pursuant to the Oklahoma Open Records Act made to the City of Oklahoma City regarding this case, and all responses from the city, all correspondence between me and city staff, including any emails, and I ask that merely to have a complete record in this case, should we need to go to district court, which I hope we don't, and that's subject, of course, to any objections that may be raised by any party at the district court level. So I would ask that those items be included in the record should this case need to go to district court.
That's fine, Mr. Crawford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I've filed a lot of paper in this case, and I think maybe I've over-lawyered the case, and I'm going to try to simplify it today. Because, maybe the communication wasn't good at the Historic Preservation Commission. But in 2006, I was the only resident of the home at 917 Northwest 40th. My family has owned the property since 1963. I was 6 weeks old when I moved in there 47 years ago next month. My nephew is the current resident of the home. He took it over after my health problems required me to move to Grove, Oklahoma. In 2006, when I was living in the house, the garage doors got to a point where the doors wouldn't open. The garage was leaning noticeably to the west. I couldn't get the garage doors open, which wasn't a big deal to me because I only kept my lawnmower and golf clubs in there. There was a lot of junk from my grandparents, from the previous residents of the home, and it wasn't that big of an issue to me. I was in a hospital, had a couple of surgeries in 2006, and I asked my father to, look into what repairs could be made on the garage. He contacted McGuire Brothers Construction, which has since been renamed to McGuire O'Hara. Mr. O'Hara came out from McGuire Brothers, looked at the garage and said, there isn't anything you can do to repair it. The garage is going to have to be replaced. We didn't proceed with that because of my health situation, and financially I couldn't afford to replace the garage if I needed to. In the subsequent year, my nephew, who should be present there in the council chambers, and is available for any questions you may have, moved into the house. He's taken it over. He's fortunate in the house. And Stan 3 has made a lot of improvements to the house. He's done a lot of work inside. He's done a lot of work outside. And I think, in general, most of that work's been done with approval when needed. And we think the work's been done of high quality. My family's owned the house for a long time. We have a lot of respect for the neighborhood and a lot of respect for the property. Now, my nephew's also done some strange things on the property. He's, basically torn out an upstairs bathroom in the house that was working and hasn't replaced it yet. He's removed some chain link fencing out of the backyard and hasn't replaced that. And he removed the garage. So he's there. You can ask him. He may just enjoy tearing things down and not replacing them. I'm not exactly sure what his plans are, and it's really not relevant today to this hearing, and it's not relevant to what was in front of the HP Commission. Stan tore the garage down on the property in the summer of 2009. At that time, he didn't apply for a certificate of appropriateness. He got notice from the city and eventually got around to applying for that in January of this year. In February, the commission held a hearing, and at that time, the city asked for a continuance of the hearing, made no suggestions to the applicant, and then we went on to an April hearing. In April, I personally appeared. I wrote a brief in support of the actions that my nephew had taken, and we had some discussion with the commission. The commission seemed to want additional information consisting of a professional opinion. I mean, essentially, we produced the evidence we produced. It's in the record that you have, but they seemed to want more in the nature of a professional or expert opinion. And so we endeavored to provide that for them. And they had a June hearing where, from my review of the record, they maybe considered the information, but in one of the commissions, the chairman, Mr. Tague of the HP Commission, said he didn't see anything new there, which kind of surprises me, but that's really neither here nor there. We didn't appear at the June hearing. I was, shortly after the April hearing, I came up to New York for treatment, and I've been here since. I really just have two things I want to present today in front of this board. And the first is in relation to the relevant HP ordinance, which is Chapter 29, Section 4250.L, paren 2, paren small a, and that's the demolition statute that applies in the city of Oklahoma City, which states that a certificate of appropriateness shall be granted if one of the following occurs. Subsection small a says, if the structure is non-contributing to the historic integrity of the historic district and the demolition will not adversely affect the historic character of the property or district. Now, Mr. Chairman, this is a clapboard garage of the standard kind you would find in Crown Heights. They are old structures. This one was 70-plus years old when it came down. The garage at 915 Northwest 40th, which is directly to the east of this property, was the exact same garage. It came down several years ago. The garage at 916 Northwest 40th, which is across the street, came down. In one case, a certificate of appropriateness was applied for and granted. In the other, it was not. But the neighborhood still continues as a historic district. On April 7th, at the hearing, Catherine Montgomery, who's the Historic Preservation Officer for the city of Oklahoma City, stated at the hearing that the loss of this garage, while unfortunate, is not going to be the tipping point that makes this neighborhood just no longer feel like a historic neighborhood. And Mr. Chairman, I agree we could have more timely applied for a CA. We could have produced better photographs, but in the end, under the ordinance that exists in the city, this garage simply doesn't rise to the level where it contributed enough to make Crown Heights Crown Heights. The district is still what it is, and I have a further argument I want to make, but truly I think the analysis ends there. And at that point, if you want to go into your discussions and deliberations, that's fine, or I'd be happy to continue at your judgment.
At this point, we do have someone signed up to speak. And I'm sorry, would you like to speak at this time?
I was just stepping up to the podium if you had any questions.
Okay. Any questions at the moment? We do have someone signed up to speak.
I do. Were the garages replaced at 915 and 916?
At 916, it was replaced. The garage was replaced. Steve and Jenny Morris reside there. They're my neighbors, good people, and they had issues with their garage as well. I just made a judgment on my own, for safety reasons for my property and safety reasons. I decided to take it down. And unfortunately, I didn't go about it the right way, and I truly apologize.
Were you the one that took it down in August?
No, I didn't take it down personally. I had somebody take it down for me.
Okay. But you were the one that authorized it and arranged it for me?
And gentlemen, could I interject at this point?
Certainly, go ahead.
There's one other thing that really troubled me from the HP hearing, and this happened both in the April hearings and in the June hearing that we were not at. In April, at 19 minutes and 55 seconds into the tape that I have, and you may have it on a different point, and I'm not sure if if the members of this board have looked at the tapes in their entirety.
We have
Mr. Tay, who's a neighbor, who lives down 40th Street, says on his own, not unprompted, says, I think it was pushed down and sold to someone when he's talking about the garage. He again states at 1 hour and 41 minutes into the tape on the June hearing, it's my understanding someone purchased that structure and took it away. The structure was sold and hauled away by the purchaser. Now, I don't know how Mr. Tay got the impression that the garage had been sold to anybody. I don't see evidence of that in the record. I know the commission is entitled to their own interpretation of the ordinances, but they are not entitled to create their own ordinances, and they're entitled to create their own facts. I would submit to this board that Mr. Tay, and he has every right to as a neighbor, and I understand his concerns for the neighborhood, but I think he's listened to some neighborhood scuttlebutt. He's heard from Jim, who talked to Betty, who heard from Harold, that, oh, these guys just tore it down and sold it. And I could understand that would be a concern for a neighbor, but it's simply not true. It's not what happened, and I think those kind of comments, those thoughts that were in the head of Mr. Tague or any other commissioners is the kind of neighborhood scuttlebutt that shouldn't be allowed at these commission hearings. I think if you read the consultant's report and you read the guidelines, which I have done and I had done before this ever became an issue, those are the kind of things that the commission's not supposed to consider.
Well,
not supposed to be any.
And they're not really relevant to this hearing either, Mr.
And I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to see a conclusion to this case. You know, I'm willing to do whatever you see fit to, you know, get this resolved. And, I apologize to the commission, you know, for taking it down without doing the proper steps to get that done.
Mrs. Zimmer?
Hi. Karen Zimmer, 226 Northwest 22nd Street. I'm the vice chair of the HP Commission, and I am here to, well, first of all, Roland wanted me to pass on what a wonderful job you've been doing on the house.
Thank you. Yeah.
He's been watching that. I guess he lives down the street.
He does.
He's really enjoyed seeing the progress on the house, which is, I guess, why he was surprised about the garage when that happened.
Right.
But I want to say that the HP Commission has very strict guidelines as to what we can approve for demolition, and there are the three different areas, the first of which Mr. Crawford mentioned, that the structure is non-contributing to the historic integrity of the historic district. And this particular garage was indeed called out on the application when it became an HP district, so that's what we go by. On the second one, B, is that the structure poses an imminent threat to public health or safety, and the demolition of said structure is required to alleviate said threat. And that's the one that we typically look for with an expert, because experts usually are the only ones that really know when a building is going to come down and if it has to come down in order to alleviate the threat. And that is what we did not have and what we need. Sometimes we can tell by pictures how bad it is, and that it really is just, being held up by a 2x4, and we don't need an official or somebody to tell us that. I can tell you, though, that the pictures that I saw were more reminiscent of my own garage than any that are about to fall down, and I just had some work done on it this spring, and it's good for, I don't know, a few more decades, I suppose. And the third that we did not consider, and I don't believe applies in this case, is that there's no viable economic use of the structure. That's typically for rental property. So I just wanted to cover those three areas and explain which one the HP Commission made their decision based on. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I've lost my video hookup of you. I don't know if you can see me. But
You can.
I'd like an opportunity to respond to that if I could.
Please go ahead, Mr. Crawford.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I ask this because, I really do think the analysis ends, according to the ordinance, at subsection A of the ordinance, because we have testimony in the record from the Historic Preservation Officer of the city, who says, and I quote, "This is not going to be the tipping point that makes this neighborhood just no longer feel like a historic neighborhood." I think the evidence is pretty clear that this structure doesn't contribute, and the neighborhood's going to move on just fine with its historic character. However, in regards to Section B of the ordinance, the Commission, I think, made it very clear that they want some more expert testimony, and I'm sorry I didn't catch the name of the woman who just appeared, but I will tell you that in our April hearing, at about 36 minutes, Mr. Tague says on the record, we see a lot of garages. Generally, we hear from a
It's okay. Just need to make sure he knows that.
Mr. Crawford, can you still hear us? Hold on for just a second if you can. We may have to restart the call. I'm going to disconnect for just a moment. So
Okay.
we can bring you back.
There we go. We're all back. Are we back?
Yeah, we are back, and we missed the last several things that you said.
I'm sorry about that. Let me just, the HP Commission made it very clear in this case that they're looking for some sort of expert opinion. And I take issue with that because it's not what's required in the city ordinances. And I would direct you to the guidelines and the standards of the preservation guidelines and standards of the city of Oklahoma City that direct what ought to happen in a historic neighborhood. Now, I have searched that document and I have searched the consultant's report, and those are the two documents that are made available publicly over the internet to the citizens of Oklahoma City to give us guidance on what to do in a historic neighborhood. There is no mention in those documents of requirements from experts. They don't refer to engineers except for one time in regards to masonry work. They specifically state that these guidelines are to be used by property owners and contractors. Now, we had a contractor come out and look at the garage, and quite frankly, we don't need a structural engineer to tell us that it was eventually going to fall over. The consultant's report, which I presume the city used in promulgating these guidelines, and certainly in revising its ordinances in either the late 90s or in the 2000s, the consultant's report states, and this is, I believe, about 10 or 11 pages in. It's not numbered when I get it off the internet. But the consultant stated that a list of submissions should be required when the applicant intends to demonstrate structural instability of a building or the design of a building that is proposed to be more compatible with the historic district. These lists of required submittals should be developed and included in the demolition ordinance language. Now, I don't want to get too lawyer on you here, but what the consultant said to the city council is, go ahead and put a list of requirements in your demolition ordinance. The city council presumably had the opportunity to do that but chose not to. The HP Commission and the staff are now saying, we choose to submit our judgment as opposed to what the City Council said. The City Council could have told us, provide an expert report. They did not. The staff and the Commission, now create this ordinance out of thin air without printing it. And, I'm simply going to tell you that this is, staff or an administrative body substituting its judgment for the ordinance promulgated by the City Council. And, if we have to appeal this and get this in front of a judge, it's a pretty simple matter of law that they're not allowed to do that. So, I respect what the Commission wants to do, and they could have put that in the ordinance, and we'd have been happy to provide it. What we gave you was a letter from our contractor that said the building was falling down. These facts are really simple. It shouldn't take hours and hours of time to get statements together from experts. It ought to be easier for the citizens. This case ought to be easy. I don't think there's any dispute that this garage was going to fall over. I'm sorry there aren't better pictures. I wish we'd done a better job submitting this, but that's water under the bridge. The basis of this appeal is that, the actions that were taken by the HP Commission, they simply don't comport with the city ordinances. They're trying to substitute their own judgment, and, they've done it, but it's not legal. So we're asking this board to look at the evidence in the record, which, we do have a letter from our contractor saying the building was unsafe. We do have testimony from the Historical Preservation Office of the City of Oklahoma City, who says the neighborhood's still going to be a historic neighborhood with or without this garage. And let's install it for a little reason. It just seems to me a little absurd to do anything else. And with that, I'll let you all go back to your discussion.
I'd like to bring your attention to an email from Stan Crawford to Paul Reichbost, the City Planning Department, dated February the 3rd of 2010. You make reference to the fact that the garage had been leaning for years and had many structural engineers check the garage to determine if it was salvageable.
In response to that, I have my neighbor to the west of me is Alan Kirkpatrick. It's not on the record because, unfortunately, we weren't able to get his letter in on time before the historical committee, but he also determined by just looking at it, and he lives next door to me, so he can see it every day, that it did have structural problems and that it did need to come down. We can go back and forth with this, and it can be he said, she said, but
Well, I mean, you're arguing that the HP Commission was unreasonable in requesting some sort of expert testimony, and,
right,
and a contractor, because he's a contractor, does not make him qualified to judge the structural integrity of a structure.
Right. I
a
agree with
structural
that.
engineer would.
And Alan Kirkpatrick next door is a structural engineer, and he was the president of the neighborhood association. And, I don't think it really takes a structural engineer to determine if something's safe or not safe. It's a, 78-year-old structure that and unfortunately I didn't do the right steps, and I'm very sorry for that, but I just determined that it was not safe. I really did fear for my personal safety and my property safety.
Gentlemen, you couldn't open the doors to the garage.
Not this person.
That's how badly it was leaning over.
I do plan on eventually putting the garage back and going by my neighbor, Alan Kirkpatrick, who's a structural engineer, will make blueprints to eventually put the garage back the way it looked originally.
Mr. Crawford, was there a letter supplied from KFC in regards to the structural integrity of the building?
Mr. Kirkpatrick wrote a letter. I don't know if it got submitted on time, but he basically said, the appropriate repair would be to dismantle it board for board, replace the structural members, and put it back up. He didn't want to give an opinion. That letter's out there, and I don't know if Stan has it with him or I've got a copy of it somewhere. But the appropriate the repair was to take it down and rebuild it. So now I've got to get some approval to get it taken down before we can apply to rebuild, which is what we're trying to do. So here we are.
Are you trying to rebuild the garage?
I'm sorry?
Did you just say you were trying to rebuild the garage? Was the intent?
Oh, yeah, they're going to build a new garage on the property, no question.
I'd like to ask Karen, too. I think in the guidelines, too, doesn't it state that the homeowners have a responsibility to properly maintain their property and to deal with circumstances that might contribute to the structural problems that you're alluding to?
Yes, it does. My garage had a problem where the doors wouldn't go down, not that the doors wouldn't go up. And we had somebody come in and help, and I guess I don't know what they all did, but they go up and down now. And that garage was on the 1922 Sanford map.
So I think doors that are in a bind may not be grounds to tear it down. What it may tell you is that you certainly need to invest some money in properly maintaining. And it may take, in some ways, that houses settle and garages settle, and you have a company come out and make the appropriate repair. And
right, and
I don't tear down a house just because a corner,
No, and I totally agree with that. But this was beyond repair, in my opinion, and also other experts' opinion. Not only
who are the other experts?
Alan Kirkpatrick, the McGuire brothers, several non-structural engineers, but other contractors came and looked at it and determined that, this is beyond repair. I mean, structurally. It was an eyesore, as well, but that's no grounds to demo it, and that wasn't my intent just because it looked bad that it needed to come down. I really, honestly, truly thought that it was structurally inept, to be up anymore.
And we only have one piece of evidence right now that would lean towards the argument that it was structurally unsound. That's from McGuire Brothers. That's all we have to deal with right at the moment.
Right, and I understand
okay.
that.
And I will point out to the board.
That's hearsay.
I would point out to the board that there are 3 standards for demolition approval, and the applicant only has to meet one standard. Mm-hmm. One of those of which is structural integrity, basically. The other is the structure non-contributing to the historic district, and demolition will not affect the historic character of the property or district, which I think is what point Mr. Crawford has been arguing, that it's that point that allows them to demolish the garage. Because he'll only have to meet one of those 3, just to point that out.
Right. Where do we go from here? The garage is not there. You can't put it back. I'm confused on where we go.
You have a standard. There is a standard in the HP ordinance that says you are to review this, or the HP Commission is to review this, as though the work had not been done already. So despite the fact that the garage has already been demolished, you were to look at it for review purposes as though they were presenting everything to you freshly. Garage is still standing. Should it be or should it not be? And as your chair pointed out, the standards for demolition approval are one or the other of the 3 items listed. So if you determine that the appellant meets any of these and that the HP Commission was incorrect, then that's your finding. If you determine that they were correct, that the applicant did not meet any of these findings, then that's your motion.
And I think, too, it's important to note that it does mention the burden of proof is on the applicant to establish the necessary facts to warrant demolition. So it is their burden of proof to prove one of those 3 instances. Correct? Yeah.
I understand that, but, you can't put the garage back.
But that one, that's not a part of it. His application initially was for demolition of the structure.
Okay.
So this body gets to decide if the HP Commission acted appropriately when they denied his certificate of appropriateness to demolish the garage. So did they review these standards for demolition correctly? If they did, then you deny the appeal. If you find that they did not, then you sustain its appeal.
Well, gentlemen, let me try to ask for a little guidance here on behalf of the applicant. In order to replace the garage, we'll have to demolish the garage that's theoretically still standing. How do we get approval for that demolition in order to replace it?
That's my question.
Yeah, we're under guideline 4250L. You know, do I find the procedure to be able to move forward? Because that's really all we want to do.
Well, this body would decide whether or not demolition is appropriate. And if they say that it is on the demolition that has already occurred, then at that point you could move forward. But if they say no, then of course there is another appeal route. So the decision that the board has is whether or not the Historic Preservation Commission acted properly in denying the certificate of appropriateness for demolition based on the standards for demolition approval set forth in the code.
You know, I get that, but here's my question. If I want to build a new garage, I have to submit an application and say, I want to demolish the garage that's there, and then build a new one. You know, am I right in presuming that?
I don't know.
Don't we have to go through this same process?
I don't know that construction of a new garage was a part of the initial application, but we do have the city's historic preservation officer here, and she can advise the board whether or not that was a part of the application.
Well, I mean, I apologize for being a simple country lawyer here. We've got to replace the structure, we got to take it down, for which we have to get demolition approval. And I assume every citizen in the HP district has to do the same. Looks pretty clear to me. So if we don't get this approved, you know, how do we get a garage back? You put us in limbo here, and really we're just looking for some direction on how to go.
Well, what this board is doing is simply reviewing your appeal of what the HP Commission found. And the only thing that was on for consideration, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was a request for approval to demolish a garage. And there was not on that agenda a request to then replace the garage. So this board is limited to what was considered by the HP Commission. If there is a plan to reconstruct a garage, that's a separate action from this. So if that is your intent, then I think the board has heard that. But Catherine McDermott...
No, I'd agree that the board's heard enough, Rita, and I would just ask you, on behalf of the applicant, who's a citizen of Oklahoma City, because of the, you know, we're allowed to get some guidance from the city, could you point us to the section of the Historical Preservation Ordinance that says we can replace the garage, which is a two-step process, a demolition and a replacement. You know, how do we avoid the demolition statute is what I'm asking.
We don't avoid it. There are two separate sections of the code that relate to demolition and construction. First, you would have to get approval to demolish, and that
What section am I not looking at?
You're looking properly at section 4250.4 C, D, H, and L of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code, also known as the Zoning and Planning Code. That has to do with demolition. Once demolition has occurred, then there is another section of the code that has to do with construction, but all that is before this board is demolition of the garage. So a decision has to be made on whether or not HB acted properly in their decision regarding demolition. But that is all that is before this board, not construction of a new garage. So once that decision is made, you could then present an application for consideration by HP for construction. But you're still at the demolition stage right now.
Well, and that raises the question of what's different between, in this case, and what happened next door at 915 Northwest 40th. I don't know that that's a consideration for this board, but
we don't know.
that's
That's not that property.
where
It's not relevant to this proceeding, actually, what happened to that garage. It's not before us at the moment. I have no idea anything about the garage, and I don't think any other commissioners do. So. Catherine, is there anything to address on how the application initially read? What Rita was stating that...
Well, you have a copy of the application in your packet.
Correct.
Which clearly states that the itemized work items up for consideration at that time was, quote, demolition of garage, close quote. Okay. So that was the extent of the application. I think that in regards to the question that was asked, how does one get past this point? And, when one proposes to demolish a garage and at the same time proposes to construct a new garage, that is often seen as some mitigation for the loss of the historic fabric of the contributing structure, which was the garage. And if it indeed was not structurally sound, then the mitigation would be the construction of a new garage. So that that's the mitigation. So in this case, since there wasn't that, I think that that may have impacted on the decision that the commission made. And certainly the applicant has the opportunity to apply again and propose demolition and construction of a new garage.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's my issue. Because I looked through the ordinances, the word mitigation never appears. Now, I know we're being legalistic here, and Rita and I shouldn't be arguing this case back and forth in front of you, but, I need to move forward for my client, and I just need to know how to do it. And, can I get this demolition approved and move on or not? That's simply what we're asking.
Catherine, was the application denied with or without prejudice?
That's what I was looking for in the papers that I have available to me, and I don't have.
It originally was with prejudice, but then they submitted one later that said without, so I didn't understand why.
What seems to be occurring is that Mr. Crawford is urging additional information that was not contained in the original application.
No, I'm not urging that. I'm looking for the ordinance that talks about mitigation.
Just a second. So because of this new information, the HB Commission did not have before it information about the construction of a new garage. So if it is the board's pleasure, you could send this back to the HP Commission with that information, the idea that he then wants not only to demolish the garage, but to build a new one. The board did not, the commission did not have that information. And so your
So we can just remand it back to the HP?
You could do that, and then
consideration?
he could amend his application to include construction of a new garage, and the commission could review his demolition request right beside his request to build a new garage. So that is something you could consider.
Let me add something here, because that's not correct. I wrote a brief and submitted it to the commission, and it's in your packet, and I said in that brief, and it's part of the record, and the commission got to approve it, that we have every intention of replacing the garage.
The application just says
Commission
demolition
is
of
allowed
garage.
to give me suggestions and tell me different things. And, now it's, I'm not making a new submission. I don't want to, I'll modify the application if you're telling me to modify the application. But, I'm just trying right now to get this approved. There has been a misdemeanor criminal charge filed against my nephew for being in violation of this statute, and I'm just trying to get the legal process moved down the road. And forgive me, but I don't understand how to do it.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that what was on the agenda before the HP Commission was simply demolition of the garage. Your brief does say at page 11 that you intend to replace the garage, but intend to do so in accordance with this budget and respect to municipal code, that you would like to have a new garage in place sometime, but cannot commit to a construction schedule at this time. It appears that maybe the HP Commission only heard the request for demolition and was not aware of your desire to install a garage. If that is the case, it would be appropriate for this board to remand the matter for their consideration of both those items.
Well, it's in the record, and we did spend a lot of time on it.
Well, what they have now is just demolition. So if you want the...
I'll leave it to the board.
Okay.
Okay, so we can remand this back to the HP Commission. We can uphold the appeal or deny the appeal. That's what's before us. So
I would ask for Mr. Crawford's opinion about what his preference would be.
Well, my only thing is we did present to the Historical Preservation that we did intend on putting it back. Now, from what I understand, you do not have to have both to get approved. You don't have to have, to demo it and then also to have blueprints for a new one. From what I understand, that's not how it works. It's not a pair deal. So, I mean, in all honesty, we are going to put a garage back, but I see that's besides the point in my eyes, the two combined.
In that case, I would be prepared to make a motion to deny the applicant and to uphold the denial of the CA by the HP Commission.
You have to have a
findings.
Yes. What are your findings? What do you specifically decide?
That there's not adequate, proof that the garage was structurally unsafe and beyond repair, and that they have not proven that the garage, did not contribute to the fabric of the HP neighborhood.
So which of the three standards are you using?
I think structurally, it's very clear that, in their opinion, in a layman's opinion, and perhaps in a contractor's opinion, they saw, that the building wasn't totally plumb and that the doors bound. But for me, that is not proof that the building is structurally unsound or beyond reasonable repair.
So are you saying the provisions of paragraph B are what you're talking about?
I'm saying that the structure did not, was not a public nuisance and did not pose an imminent threat to public health or safety.
Okay.
Second.
And
1 sec. Go ahead, Rita.
Oh, and further, is your finding that the HP Commission interpreted the ordinance correctly?
It is.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to deny the appeal based on the findings stated. Please record your votes. The appeal is denied. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Crawford, for appearing before us in this matter, and the appeal was denied.
Thank you, gentlemen. Could I ask, just as a point of clarification, if a specific order with findings of fact and conclusions of law will issue from the Board of Adjustment?
There will be an order, and the order will have specific findings.
Pardon me?
There will be an order, and the order will have specific findings.
Okay. And have those findings of fact, do we have the specific findings of fact and conclusions of law today? Because obviously I'm on a rocket docket for appeal time.
I couldn't hear what you were saying. It was kind of jumbled.
There should be a final order that issues from the board that has findings of fact and conclusions of law.
There will be an
If I need
order.
to appeal this to district court, my appeal will be based on that order.
Yes.
And I will have 10 days from the finalization of that order to file my appeal.
That's correct.
And I'm just asking when I can expect that order, because I'm on a time deadline and my health's not that good.
When do you think that order would be ready? Monday is when we expect the order to be ready.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Crawford. That's all the items on the
Anything
docket? I think that's all. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Record your votes. We're adjourned.